What's up everyone, Darcblade here with a Hunter's Guide to Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. In this video we're going to be showing off an endgame build, this time for the longsword. Now what is an endgame build? Well, it's a build that is constructed from the rarest armour, weaponry and decorations in the game. They also feature talismans and Krios crafting, but the Krios crafting isn't to the extent where the skills featured on the armour are the absolute rarest. Now, as always, if you find these videos helpful or enjoyable, please consider leaving a like as well as subscribing to the channel, as I try to bring you a variety of builds for a variety of different playstyles. Now when it comes to the longsword in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, it's a very strong weapon. It can pretty much forego defensive skills thanks to the sheer number of counter-attack mechanics it has. This means that you can concentrate on DPS and quality of life skills. But one aspect when it comes to dealing damage with the longsword is you have to worry about your wire bugs. So with that I present to you the Mantle longsword build. This build is all about allowing us to use our wire bugs more frequently, allowing us to perform those silkbind attacks more often during a hunt, ultimately allowing us to deal more damage. So for this build you'll need the following. First of all you'll need the Risen Kushala Glare, then the Risen Kushala Iram, Risen Kushala Grande, the Omnio Ateobi and the Risen Kushala Crus. For your Petalace, go with the Absolute Petalace or Demon Petalace. Demon Petalace if you want extra DPS, Absolute Petalace if you want something a little bit more balanced with extra health. As for your talisman, go with a talisman with as much attack boost on it as possible. Decoration slots are also desired. I'm using a talisman that has attack boost at level 3, a tier 2 decoration slot and a point in the razor sharp skill. Now as for your weapon, you can get away with using a lot of weapons with this build in all honesty. That is because we focus on raw attack more than anything else. So I'm using one of the highest raw attack longswords out there, the Abyssal Flicker. For the Krios crafting augmentations, I'd recommend going for attack boost upgrade, and then for the rampage decoration I've got the Kushala Soul decoration. This gives us the Kushala Soul rampage skill. That increases our affinity when we're attacking a monster continuously. And speaking of decorations, you've got a fair few to play around with. First of all, I've gone for jumping jaws. This is optional in all honesty, but it gives us a few points in Evade Extender, which is a quality of life skill I like to use. Then go for Tenderizer jaws to max out weakness exploit, Spirit Bird Core jaws for a point in the Spirit Bird Core skill, Sheath jaws to max out quick sheath, Iron Shell jaw to get Kushala Blessing to level 3, Critical jaws to max out crit boost, a Brace jaw for a point in flinch free, Mighty jaws to max out maximum might, and finally a Challenger jaw to max out Agitator. So if you've done what I've done here, you have a build with a raw attack of 436 with a dragon rating of 19, you have a huge chunk of purple sharpness, and you'll have 5% base affinity. This is when maximum might is in effect. This can be even higher, up to 70% when you take into account weakness exploit and the buff we get from Agitator. You also have a decent defense of 853 that is strong against water and ice, neutral against fire, but unfortunately weak to thunder and dragon. As for the switch skills, this build can work with any of them, so use what you personally like to use. So when it comes to the skills, first of all you have attack boost at level 7. Attack boost is a skill that increases the raw attack of a build, and at level 4 or above grants us a percentage bonus to our raw attack as well. You'll then have Agitator at level 5. Agitator is a skill, a buff in fact, that kicks in whenever a monster becomes enraged. When this happens, we'll gain bonus raw attack as well as bonus base affinity. You'll then have critical boost at level 3, which is a skill that increases the damage of our critical hits on a monster, but only applies to the raw portion of an attack, not the elemental portion. But as this build is a raw attack build, then this is a very useful skill for increasing our damage. You'll then have weakness exploit at level 3, which is a skill that grants us bonus affinity whenever we're attacking monster weak points. This can be up to 50%. You'll then have maximum might at level 3, which is a skill that whenever our stamina is full, we'll gain bonus affinity. I would say maximum might and weakness exploit are definitely needed with this build, especially if you are using the Abyssal Flicker, as it has a massive negative 25% affinity attached to it. If you were using a different longsword, you could potentially drop some of these affinity based skills, as you would probably reach that 100% affinity. Anyway, you'll then have Razor Sharp at level 3, which prevents sharpness loss 50% of the time when we're attacking monsters. You'll then have Quick Sheath at level 3, which is a skill that greatly increases the sheathing speed of our weapon, and this applies to the special sheath abilities that the longsword has. You then have the Kushala Blessing at level 3, which is a skill that increases water and ice damage if we're using weapons that have those elements. And at level 3 it also allows our recovery to exceed the red portion of our health gauge. To be honest, this skill is kind of optional in all honesty. This build doesn't actually rely on it whatsoever, but it is found on some of the armor pieces I use, and I find that level 3 is still kind of useful. You then have Wirebug Whisperer at level 3, which reduces the cooldown on our wire bugs so we can use our silkbind attacks more often, as well as how long we can hold additional wire bugs. This combined with Wind Mantle are two of the key skills for this build. Anyway, you'll then have Burst at level 3, formerly known as Chain Crit, which, when we're continuously landed hits on a monster, it will increase our raw and elemental attack. You'll then have Wind Mantle at level 3, which is the namesake of this build. When we're using a Silkbind attack, it boosts our Wirebug gauge recovery. You can tell when this is an effect by a green outline around our Wirebugs at the bottom of the screen. Landing continuous attacks will increase this effect, but it wears off after you sheathe your weapon. And with the longsword, you have to be careful as sheathing your weapon is sometimes done automatically depending on what move you use. But this doesn't apply to the special sheath ability that the longsword has. This, coupled with Wirebug Whisperer, allows us to use our Silkbind attacks more frequently when we're on a hunt, enhancing our damage and our defense. You'll then have Evade Extender at level 2, which is an optional skill. A result of the jumping decoration, I tend to take Evade Extender on all my builds. Basically, this increases the distance at which we dodge and evade. You'll then have Spare Shot at level 1, which is a byproduct of the armor. It's not needed on a longsword build whatsoever. You'll then have Flinch Free at level 1, which reduces minor knockbacks from monsters and especially our allies. You'll then have Adrenaline Rush at level 1, which is a skill that when we dodge a monster's attack just as it's about to hit us, then it will gain a boost to our raw attack. However, with the longsword, it's not the most useful of skills because we want to counter attack monster attacks, not dodge them. And then finally you have Spirit Bird Call at level 1, which is a useful quality of life skill that allows random spirit birds to come to our hunter. This occurs at fixed intervals and reduces the need for our hunter to go out of their way to find spirit birds themselves. So those are all the essential skills for this Wind Mantle longsword build. Let's quickly move on to the next section where we talk about the Krios crafting. Now, Krios crafting is an endgame activity, and these are endgame builds, so they are featured, but most of the time when it comes to Krios crafting, I try to get decoration slot upgrades rather than actual skills. With more decoration slots and decoration slot upgrades, it allows for more customization with our builds. So for the Risen Kushala Glare, I've got a tier 4 decoration slot upgrade. For the Risen Kushala Iram, I've got a point in maximum might, as well as reduction in the Spare Shot skill. For the Risen Kushala Grande, I've got a point in attack boost. For the Omnio Aterbi, I've got a point in the Agitated skill, but a reduction in the Emboldened skill. And then finally for the Risen Kushala Crus, I've got a point in the attack boost skill. But every build out there, even the endgame builds, they all come with various pros and cons. No build is absolutely perfect. Even if it's the strongest build out there, it may be difficult to craft. When it comes to the Wind Mantle longsword build, its biggest pro is its damage output. Able to take down monsters quite quickly thanks to focusing on raw attack and being able to use our Silkbind moves frequently. On top of that, this build also has decent sharpness management. Thanks to having a huge purple sharpness bar coupled with razor sharp, it means that rarely will we have to worry about going into white or especially blue sharpness. Then finally for the pros is that this build can be used against pretty much any monster out there. This is because this build focuses on raw attack more than elemental attack, and even though this is a dragon element weapon, the dragon rating is so low and the raw attack so high that it doesn't really matter about who we use this weapon against. But of course there are cons. One of the biggest cons is, unfortunately, you can accidentally get rid of the Wind Mantle buff by performing certain moves with the longsword that automatically sheathe your weapon, or accidentally wirebug into safety. With that in mind, try to let your hunter get up naturally so you don't lose the Wind Mantle buff. And the other con is, unfortunately, this build is lacking in defensive skills. But like I said at the start of this video, as long as you're comfortable with counter-attacking, rarely will a longsword build need to invest heavily in defensive skills, and you can instead focus on quality of life and offensive skills. So there we have it, that is the Wind Mantle build. It is a fun longsword build to use. Being able to use our wirebugs as often as you can with this build is definitely welcome. Whether you want to spam the Sakura slash attack over and over again, or having the soaring kick that allows you to perform the Spirit Helm Breaker on a quicker cooldown, it's very much welcome. As long as you remember not to accidentally sheathe your weapon or wirebug to safety when you don't need to and thus lose that Wind Mantle buff, you'll find that this is a very enjoyable longsword build that can take on pretty much any task we come across in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. So, what are your thoughts? Please leave a comment down below, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing the Wind Mantle build for the longsword in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.